Hey there everyone, this is Samuel Johnson and welcome back to the Spider-Verse Retrospectives. And today we'll be continuing our discussion of the Spider-Verse storyline as we take a look at The Amazing Spider-Man Volume 3, Number 10. Now, last time on Spider-Verse. As we all know from the lead-in material to Spider-Verse, a family of interdimensional vampires has been pretty much just bobbing around the multiverse and killing any spider totems they can find, which in this case means anybody in the multiverse who has spider power, spider-men, spider-women, spider-children, spider-animals in some case. And as a result of this, a couple of the few remaining Spider-Man, in this case the Superior Spider-Man and a new Spidey called Spider UK, became aware of what they were doing and decided the best way to combat this threat was by building their own teams of Spider-Man, with Spider UK getting as any Spider-Man he can find, while the Superior Spider-Man had to methodically pick his because, well, he wanted to try and think strategically. As a result of this, one of the inheritors, the eldest brother by the name of Deimos, decided to target Earth 616, the main Marvel Universe, much against the wishes of his younger brother Morlun, who has a vendetta with the Spider-Man of that world. And as a result of him going to attack this world, Spidey UK's army wound up going to Earth 616 and gathered the Spideys of that world to pretty much protect them, which in this case includes Peter Parker, the Amazing Spider-Man, Jessica Drew, Spider-Woman, Anya Corazon, Spider-Girl, Cindy Moon, Silk, Miguel O'Hara, a time-displaced Spider-Man 2099, and Kane Parker, the then-current Scarlet Spider. As such, they want to bring them back to their safe zone, which in this case was a universe where Peter never lost his cosmic powers from the Enigma Force, and thus he's technically the perfect weapon to take down the Inheritors if they should come here. And they pretty much just told the main universe, Peter Parker, that they think that they want him to be the leader because they say he's the greatest of them all, which even he's a little surprised by. However, at the same time that this was going down, another inheritor by the name of Verna wound up setting her sights on the Ultimate Universe and that world's Spider People. In this case, Miles Morales and the Ultimate version of Jessica Drew, who in that reality was actually a clone of Peter Parker, and was, at the time of the story, was also the new Black Widow. As a result of this, issue 10 actually opens up with Miles and Jess as they are pretty much getting their asses handed to them, with both of them being pretty much pinned down by Verna's hounds, so to speak, which, as I have to remind you, are essentially just feral versions of Spider-Man villains, and yeah, they're pretty much not, and pretty much, yeah, it looks like Verna's going to win this, with even Verna kind of lamenting that she wished that she had found more suitable prey, so to speak, to essentially whet her appetites. However, she actually does seem to get her wish as a portal opens up, and from it comes three Spideys, specifically the Superior Spider-Man, Assassin Spider-Man, and a new Spider-Man who was actually created for this storyline, Hobby Brown, aka Spider-Punk. I'm not going to get into his deal until much later in the story, as he actually does have a story in one of the tie-ins, so he'll have his time in the spotlight then, but to kind of summarize it, he's essentially a punk rocker Spider-Man. As in his world, he's anti-authoritarian, he fight the power, even has his own little army. It's kind of awesome. Kind of gets political, but I'm not going to get into that. But point is, he's very much a guy who means business and is willing to use some very lethal force if necessary. Not a bad guy, but had a rougher life. And his Spider-Man costume is actually kind of awesome, as he has like spikes running down the middle of his mask. He wears like a biker jacket, and he even wears tennis shoes without. It's cool, and I like it. But either way, this trio of Spideys manages to save Miles and Jess by taking down Verna's hounds, so to speak, and they pretty much just tell Miles and Jess to suit up or get the hell out of here, get the hell out of here, which, yeah, they do concede, especially since Miles does kind of know Otto. We'll get to that when we get to that, but Verna is not exactly happy that in order to say that not only did they save the Spidey she was hunting, but they hurt her pets. So she ends up rushing at them and ends up smashing the tombstone of Miles' mother, which just before Miles gets through the portal, he turns around and tells Verna that under no uncertain terms, she's now made it personal before the portal closes, with Verna yelling out about how she will find him and feast on his bones and all that crap. But as that's going on, back with the regular Spider-Army, Peter is kind of wondering why the hell he's the chosen one, why they want him to be the leader, as after all, he's just a Peter Parker, a regular old Spider-Man, probably no different from a lot of the other members of their team right now. But the thing is, they do actually explain why they want him to be the leader. Because out of all the Spider-Men there, he's the only one who's actually faced an inheritor and won, citing his previous battles in Moreland. Like I said, which I think kind of makes sense, and I do understand. And actually, it is kind of understandable. The inheritors, as we've seen in the story, are very much hard to kill. In a fair fight, they vastly overpower any of the Spider-Men. But out of all of the Spideys here, Peter is probably one of the few in the multiverse who's actually faced them and come out in one piece. And as a result, yeah, I can kind of see why he would be considered the one that they would want to go to. Because after all, it's like if he fought a bully on the playground. He ends up whooping everyone's asses, but then one day you meet a kid from another school who's a nice guy, everyone likes hanging out with, but the bully is afraid of. So basically, everyone suddenly wants to flock to the other guy because, well, if the bully's afraid of him, that makes him your best friend. So in other words, then basically, Peter's that other guy. Peter is the one Peter has faced the inheritors and won, so they pretty much think that he's the best bet for the team. However, Peter doesn't really have any time to deny them. Peter doesn't really have enough time to say, "No, I don't want the job," as Spider UK's dimensional transporter ends up beeping. You see, the thing is, he's actually been he and the rest of the Spider Army have been keeping track of Otto's team. However, because Otto has been having his team cloaked with his devices, because remember back during the Superior Spider-Man run, he had the device that he thought actually hurt Karn, but did nothing, but he repurposed into cloaking technology. Well, they finally managed to get a reading on Otto's team, and so the Spider Army decides that they want to go in after them. So Peter is still a bit reluctant to take over the role as leader. Well, at this point, he kind of has no choice, and so they end up giving him a dimensional teleporter, and they start forming their own teams of Spideys to try and go and retrieve Otto's team. Because, well, if they're out there, they think they might be they might be a liability, and the inheritors could be targeting after them because it's a whole group of Spider-Men all in one place. They think they're sitting ducks. Which I have to remind you, they do not know that Otto has been using cloaking technology, so I can kind of see why they would be doing this. As a result, Ben Reilly, Old Man Spider, and Peter Parker end up forming their own little teams. But essentially, pretty much, Peter's team consists of all the Spideys from his world. But when he tries bringing Cindy Moon along, well, Old Man Spider objects. He thinks he doesn't want Cindy to show up, and likewise, which is kind of a bit, which even Cindy kind of calls Old Man Spider out on, but they don't really have a lot of time to dwell on that because they still need to go and try and get to the Superior Spider Army and try and bring them back to the safe zone. As such, all three Spideys end up gathering their teams, which I'm not going to ever count everybody that's on both teams, which I'll mention them when I can, but otherwise I think it consists of Old Man Spider, Spider UK, Spider-Man, Main Universe Spider-Man, Spider-Man 29, Spider-Woman, Ben Reilly, and Spider-Ham. But again, I might be missing one or two names. I think I mentioned Old Man Spider, but whatever. And so they all end up jumping through a portal back to try and go and recruit the Superior Spider Army. But Silk ends up going, screw that, to what Old Man Spider said, and jumps through the portal anyway, much to the chagrin of Cosmic Spider-Man. Oh yeah, another one of the Spideys was Mayday, so that's kind of a thing. Either way, they end up arriving in 2099 and end up coming face to face with the Superior Spider Army. Which, yeah, the instant they show up, the Ashley ends up calling in Otto to let him know what's going on. And the instant Peter sees Otto, yeah, he's justifiably shocked. And of course, at least it kind of does lead to a nice little bit of character stuff, as the Spideys of Earth 616 end up wondering what the hell he's doing here. They first start to wonder if maybe he's from another dimension or if he's a clone, but his readings are that of the Superior Spider-Man of the Earth 616 Spider-Man. As such, Peter does start recalling when Otto got blasted out of time during his book, so yeah, he's determined that this is the Superior Spider-Man back from that time. As such, the instant Otto sees the Spider Army here, he just assumes that they're here to join his army rather than the other way around. But he's still not exactly happy to see them. Mostly because he thinks there's too many of them and they're here a little too soon. Excuse me one second. Sorry about that puppy stuff. But, yeah, Otto's frustrations. So, remember back when Otto turned... So, yeah, the cloaking technique. So, let's go back to talking about his cloaking technology. If you remember back during the Superior Spider-Man lead-ins to the storyline, well, Otto mentioned how he could repurpose the weapon that he thought could kill the Inheritors into a weapon that could at least mask their scent from them. However, even he admitted when he realized he needed to build his army that it could only do so much, and that if he wanted to continue building his army, he needed to do it precisely, methodically, because unfortunately the cloaking technology only works to a point. So which is part of why he only has been getting so many Spider-Men for his army, because he essentially needs to pick and choose who he wants and how the best way to get them without causing his cloaking technology to essentially be overloaded and then become ineffective. And sadly, with the Spider Army here, yeah, it can't really do a good job masking their scents, especially since a few of the Spideys in their group have a particularly strong scent. In this case, there's Kane, who, as we've established, is the other, and then there's Cindy Moon, who the instant Old Man Spider sees that she's there, he's not happy. But the thing is, she's also kind of emitting a strong scent, and while this does lead to a kind of humorous moment where when Otto gets near her, he does briefly become infatuated with her because he is still technically the main universe Spider-Man, apparently she also has a very strong scent. And that's because, as we learn in this issue, she's the bride. Yeah, remember back in the last issue when Solus of the Inheritors was talking about he knew the locations of the other and the bride and another spider totem called the Scion? Yeah, Cindy's the bride. Don't ask me what the bride is supposed to be. I think the gimmick is that she's supposed to essentially be the perfect mate for whatever her world Spider-Man, for her world Spider-Man, especially since she was also bitten by the spider that gave Peter his powers. So that's probably why she's called the bride, but that's just kind of my own personal interpretation based on context clues. Either way, because Otto keeps calling them out on it and even specifically mentions Silk, Old Man Spider begins dropping information, as he actually does know about Kane's status as the host for the other, and Cindy's status as the bride. And the instant that he mentions their special spider totems, well, Otto just starts brushing him off because, well, that's all superstitious hogwash. He's a man of science. This is not some mystical whatever. This is real life, and basically the whole point of this is these guys are overloading his technology, and unfortunately that means the cloaking tech is now useless. And to pretty much prove his point, another portal opens up, and from it comes Deimos of the Inheritors, ready to start killing Spider-Man. As such, thankfully, though, Otto's actually planned for this, as he immediately gets his team on the ready, and they begin mounting a counteroffensive, with those who have long-range weapons shooting Deimos from a distance, while the Spideys that are good in hand-to-hand combat go in close and go for his vitals. Unfortunately, this still doesn't really do much for Deimos. This doesn't really do much, as Deimos is able to knock a few Spideys aside and even out of the building, and in the midst of the battle, he manages to get to the cyborg Spider-Man and sadly kills him. However, regardless of what either Spider team was hoping to do, they pretty much realize, okay, this is a fight going on, and so both teams of Spideys end up coming together, which also does allow Peter to finally realize that Miles Morales is there, and yeah, the thing is, Peter's actually met Miles before. In fact, Miles has actually encountered the main universe Spider-Man on at least 2 occasions. The first was during a mini-series called Spider-Man, wherein the main universe Peter Parker wound up getting sent to the Ultimate Universe and met that world's heroes, and another storyline called Cataclysm, wherein Galactus from the main Marvel Universe wound up getting sent to the Ultimate Universe and pretty much set his sights on the Ultimate Universe's Earth, which also resulted in Miles meeting the Superior Spider-Man, which is part of the reason why he's agreeing to all this at all, because he thinks Otto is Peter, since, Otto's in Peter's body. But yeah, the instant that Miles sees Peter does confirm that the guy he's working for is not him. And while Miles doesn't exactly doubt the information, he doesn't really fully believe it until one little thing happens. During the battle, Silk is starting to kind of lament coming at all, as, yeah, yes, yeah, like Otto said, her scent is essentially was one of the greatest attractors for the inheritors, and as she's lamenting this, Old Man Spider talks about how he agrees, but not in the way she thinks, as he doesn't just think that she shouldn't have come here, he thinks that she should have stayed in her bunker. Which, yeah, it's kind of odd that he knows about that. But either way, Otto pretty much brushes off the conversation, gets out his robotic legs, and joins in the fight as well. And ultimately, he actually manages to land a killing blow on Deimos. Which, yeah, does shock the the surrounding Spider-Men, well, save Mayday, who wanted Deimos dead. But, yeah, this does confirm to Miles that this ain't the Spider-Man he knows. However, what makes it even strange, however, something is a bit strange, because while I've not read the previous stories of Morlun, apparently, when Morlun died in those stories, well, his body turned to dust. And yet, when Otto when he wound up killing Deimos, his body is completely fine. And ultimately Miguel is able to determine that this is a stasis charge, as yeah, he recognized that there were in 2099 upon arriving, and yeah, he realized that Otto integrated some of 2099's tech into his suit. However, and yeah, pretty much the reason why the thing is, Otto has not been idling by since we last saw him. Apparently, since the last time we saw him, he has been studying the Inheritors, learning their weaknesses, what can and can't hurt them, how the best way to fight them is, and why he has Spider Army work so strategically. So he he does know them in and out, and does kind of realize. And part of the reason why he integrated the stasis charges into his legs is because now they have a body that they can examine. They can actually do something, which means if they can look into the Inheritors' physiology, it can give them a better chance of fighting them. Although he still has issues with Silk being there because, like I said, her scent is still the highest, and she can still attract more of the Inheritors to her. Old Man Spider ends up getting into an argument with him, and he pretty much just tells Otto he knows nothing. That Old Man Spider is the one that knows everything, and that if they want to get out of this, they need to listen to him. But before he can actually say anything, another portal opens up, and a hand comes out and snaps his neck. And the owner of said hand is Deimos. Only this time he now comes with company, specifically Brix and Bora. Yeah, everyone's a little astounded that he's here, especially since they can see his body lying over there. But pretty much the assembled Spideys realize that this has gone foobar and that they need to get the hell out of here, and so they try to make a run for it, but Deimos, Brix, and Bora pretty much just go in for the kill and start trying to attack them. With, sadly, in the midst of the battle, another Spidey goes down, specifically Assassin Spider-Man, which ends up putting an end to whatever plot thread was going to be laid down with him, Otto, and Ashley fighting the other Spider-Man to kill the Inheritors, so what can you do? But pretty much, yeah, in the midst of it all, they are still wondering how Deimos is there, but thankfully, there are a few assorted Spideys that might have an idea. Specifically, Ben Reilly and Kane Parker, who do start to put together that they think that they are using cloning technology. Which, yeah, they are. Pretty much, this is how the Inheritors have been able to survive for so long, as Gen X has actually managed to create a cloning facility on another universe, and essentially, if the Inheritors are ever killed, their minds just get transferred to a clone body, which is what happened with Deimos here, as when he was killed, his mind got transported to another body, and, well, upon realizing, okay, there's a team of Spideys there that are actually a decent match for me, I might need some backup, and that's why he brought Brix and Bora. However, with the knowledge that they're using clone bodies in mind, Kane and Ben believe they might have a way of actually taking them down, and as such, Kane and Ben end up tuning their portal devices to the portal that the Inheritors came out of, and decide that if they want to end this, they need to go and stop this at the source. And since they're the only two people here who know about cloning stuff, then this is all be good. However, before they jump through the portal, they end up getting the unexpected assistance of Ultimate Jessica Drew, since, like I said, she's also a clone of Peter Parker, so she wants in on this mission. And so the three of them jump through a portal and go off into one of the tie-ins of the series, specifically Scarlet Spiders, which we'll get to much later. But yeah, Miles is lamenting that he just got ditched, but Peter assures Miles that they can still keep fighting, so he essentially ushers him through the portal back to the safe zone. before Peter can join him, Old Man Spider ends up calling to Peter. And while at first Peter thinks that means that he can be saved, well, his neck snapped. He's not going to last long. As such, the Old Man Spider unmasks, and we see he ain't an alternate Peter Parker. This Spider-Man is Ezekiel Sims, or more specifically, an alternate universe version of Ezekiel Sims. Pretty much, Old Man Spider explains that on his world, when Morlun arrived and fought Peter, well, Peter died, and as a result of this, Ezekiel, who already was inspired by Peter, as he did go to Peter, as even in the main universe, Ezekiel went to Peter and did try to convince him to go into the bunker before Peter told him no thanks. Essentially, Ezekiel decided that pretty much Ezekiel, inspired by Peter and his sacrifice, decided to carry on his name, having the suit made, which I think is actually, by the way, it makes sense why it'd be the Last Stand suit if that's the case, because there actually is a tailor in the Marvel Universe who does handle both superheroes and supervillains, and he actually did draw up the Last Stand suit for Spidey during that storyline, so that's interesting. And pretty much ever since, Ezekiel has been carrying on carrying on the Spider-Man name in Peter's honor. But pretty much, he wants to talk to Peter because, well, as I mentioned, Ezekiel was the head of the Spider Society. He knows about all this mystical spider stuff and the totems and the inheritors, so he pretty much has one last thing he wants to tell Peter before he officially croaks. In this case, he tells Peter that he needs to keep his eye out for the Scion, the other... Sorry about that. This soda was not going down right. But like I said, he wants Peter to keep an eye out for the Scion, the Other, and the Bride. That he tells them they need to keep them safe, because if something happens to them, then all this was for nothing. As such, Peter realizes that that's what Ezekiel called Silk, but before he can get any further elaboration, Ezekiel presumably dies in his arms, and before he can ask any further, Silk ends up coming in and steals his teleporter, because, well, she's already feeling guilty about having drawn the inheritors here, and decides that the best way to keep them off the Spider-Army's tail is to have them go after her, is to essentially ditch them, as she opens up a portal and flies through, with Brix and Bora chasing after her, though she doesn't go without backup, as Jessica Drew decides that she's going to go after her, and Superior Spider-Man ends up sending Spider-Man a war to trail her, as well as he wants to keep an eye on her, which ends up going off into the Spider-Woman tie-in for Spider-Verse, and since we still have one more tie-in we need to bring into this, in the background, well, Spider-Man 2099 is grabbing Deimos' body alongside two other Spider-Man, specifically the six-armed Spider-Man and another Spidey that were introduced through in this event called Lady Spider. Again, we'll get to her later because she does have her own story, and they're pretty much just going off to get the body examined, with Deimos deciding that he needs to go after them because, well, they don't want them having access to whatever information lies in that body. So they go off into their own tie-in, and the resulting Spideys decide they need to leave, with Otto pretty much saying that he already has a plan, and the last thing he needs is for them to take him back, and now he just wants them to take him back to the safe zone. And so the assembled team of Spideys that are left from both armies end up going back to the safe zone, with of course Mayday going up to Cosmic Spider-Man and getting her brother back. And at this point, everybody, it's still kind of a somber tone, pretty much, as Peter does want to explain to the assembled Spideys about what the heck happened and how everything's going on. But Otto pretty much tells him the time for talking is over. At which point, Peter's spider sense starts going off, and Otto makes one grand speech telling them all that this is war, they need to stand ready, and that from now on, he's in charge. And that's where the comic ends, so. Okay, my thoughts on issue 10 of the storyline. It's fine. Again, it's just another piece of the puzzle. And this one is basically where this issue is pretty much where the story starts branching out. As I mentioned, Spider-Verse has tie-ins. Plenty of tie-ins. Some of them are ultimately just part of the story and some are pretty much just show extra sides of Spider-Verse and the assembled Spideys that are part of it, which is what we saw with Edge of Spider-Verse, and even in the backup stories for the Superior Spider-Man. But in this case, this is where we start getting to the tie-ins that are explicitly linked to the Spider-Verse story. Now, as I mentioned, I'm not going to be looking at the tie-ins till we actually finish with the main story, but those tie-ins are a part of it, and when it's necessary, I will explain what happens in them because they do factor into what's going on with the story. Again, sorry, one sec. Sorry, minor coughing fit, but yeah, like I said, these are where we get to the tie-ins that are essentially a part of the story. But that's, and basically, it does well in essentially establishing where every part branches out on, and in a way, I'm kind of okay with that. While I am I'm not gonna deny, having tie-ins so explicitly linked to a story like this, it can annoy me on some regard, especially since I feel like it's unnecessary in that regard. I've read plenty of stories that have had tie-ins where they've actually had an integral plot point going on, and even the ones that are good, I think it's dumb. I think it's just dumb. I know that a lot of modern comics do it, but it's still dumb. The fact that they do it so readily, I think it annoys me. It feels like if I want to understand one thing, I need to have looked at something else. It's one of the reasons why I don't watch the Disney Plus Marvel shows until I have no choice, with the exception of What If, because I love What If. But that's a tangent. With that said, what I do enjoy about these tie-ins are that it does add a bit more scale to what's going on in Spider-Verse, because, like Otto said at the end of the issue, this is a war. While many of the Spideys do want to try and find a more peaceful solution to stopping the Inheritors, by peaceful, I mean a non-lethal solution, this is still a war. The Inheritors are not just going to go quietly and say, oh, well, sorry we were doing all this. Here, we'll just go over here and let you handle it from now on. No, the Inheritors are not going to stop until every Spider-Man is dead. And if the Spider-Armies want to prevent that, then they need to find a way to take them down. Even if that solution is non-lethal, it has to be able to do enough so that the Inheritors are at the very least put in a position where they can't do anything. And so pretty much the idea of having these teams kind of spreading out and just doing their own things, I think it works, because it essentially has the Spider-Armies being more proactive in trying to find ways to take them down. With the team of clone Spideys, we at the very least have a team that's trying to essentially cut off their resurrection matrix. As this team is able to put together, okay, they seem to go into clone bodies, so we just need to cut that off, and we can at least cut off one of their avenues. We have another team that's focusing on Cindy Moon, as she's a special spider totem who is being specifically targeted by the Inheritors, so there's stuff going on there. And then likewise, we now have a team that's taking Damos's body away so they can have it examined and figure out what makes it tick and so forth. So, which in turn can give the Spider-Army an advantage if they can find any viable results. I do like that, and it showcases that they aren't just standing by and letting the Inheritors just keep killing them. They actually are trying to find active solutions that can help them in taking them down, and they're having separate teams going out and doing those things. I like that. I think it works, and it does add grander scale. Again, it does annoy me that those things are essentially in tie-ins, and those tie-ins are essential for the plot. But at the very least, I do think it works. And the thing is, while I am kind of annoyed that these things aren't necessary for understanding the story, that does not mean the material is bad. I will openly state that while it annoys me that I have to watch the Disney Plus Marvel shows in order to understand stuff in the MCU, that does not mean the shows are bad. Based on what I've seen of them, they actually can be pretty good. But my point is, I like seeing it branch out. I just hate how it's done. So there you go. 1 second. Sorry about that puppy stuff, but yeah, another little thing that I do like is seeing the Spider-Armies come together. While it is true that both Spider-Armies wound up forming on their own times, well, the gimmick of Spider-Verse is having almost every version of Spider-Man coming together. And so, while it is interesting to see seeing the superior Spider-Man essentially have his own army and trying to fight them off, I do like that Otto has not just been resting on his hands and just waiting for things to happen. He actually has been thinking strategically and working out the best way to actually fight the Inheritors head on. At the very least, yeah, it is cool to see them come together, and like I just said, I do think it's cool that he was actually thinking strategically when facing the Inheritors. Yes, he's still an arrogant jackass, and at the end of the day, it's Otto Octavius, and the only reason he's even working with all these other Spider-Men is because he believes it's necessary to best combat the Inheritors. But with that said, I still like how he's dealing with it. He actually is thinking strategically, and while he doesn't do it in such a nice way, he does point out the flaws in the way that the Spider Army was operating, especially since having all these Spider people come and go to arriving in one place. Because as he learned when he and his team went to go fight Karn, too many Spider people in one place. Essentially, it's like shooting up a flare, telling the Inheritors, "Come get us, we're right here." So yeah, he does rightfully call them out on it, but at the very least, it does also give them the advantage they need, because it showcases that in all of Otto's experience with the Inheritors, he has found a way to actually take them down. Though even he admits that in the battle with Deimos, Kane was the one that did the most damage. Though Otto still brags that he got the killing blow, which is typical Otto Octavius. But at the pretty much at the end of the day, the comic is still not bad. There is still some nice little character stuff every here and there, like when Cindy arrives on the Earth 13 with the Cosmic Spider-Man, she immediately just starts scoping out the other Spideys to see if she has the same connection with them as she does with her Peter. And again, there's still the aforementioned thing with Otto going, this rather alluring woman. Like, again, I find that just kind of amusing because, again, he is technically the main Marvel Universe's Spider-Man as well, so of course he's attracted to her. And at the same time, it does still lay down the foundation for everything going forward, while also hinting more at what the Inheritors are doing with Old Man Spider, aka Ezekiel Sims, pretty much telling Peter, look, you gotta keep these 3 specific Spideys safe, because the Inheritors are gonna come for them, and if something happens to them, then we're all effed. So, it branches everything out, it brings the teams together, it has awesome action and some nice little character stuff, and overall, comic is fine. Again, it's just a part of the story at this point. It just continues along the story. It has a lot of cool action, does further explain what the Inheritors' deal is. It lays down more foundation for the plot with Ezekiel and explaining everything to Peter. Overall, fine little issue that continues along the story and finally brings both Spider teams together and ends on a nice little cliffhanger with Otto proclaiming himself as the leader, because of course he would. So, yeah, that's about it. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you for watching. I'm Samuel Johnson, and I'll see you Thursday when we look at issue 11. So until then, I hope you have a good night, and take care.